I could go on, but
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
yeah, well,
Any questions? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Wait, stand up. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Morning, Counselor. My name is Craig Iannini, Counselors. I'm an Assistant District Attorney with the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. I have known Chris for 17 years, the entire time I've been in the office, and I can't think of a more qualified person to be a judge. I would echo much of what Judge Miller said in terms of his legal experience, his meticulous preparation, but most importantly, his temperament. He treated me the same when I was a new DA as to when we were trying some of the most complex homicides in this county. He is a man with a great capability to learn, great humility, as Judge Miller said, and top flight integrity. And I'm very proud to support his nomination, and I hope you will too.
Thank you very much. Any questions, Councilor Kennedy? You're going to waive your opening, by the way?
I don't mind waiving on that, but we both know his background, so I think we could waive the opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I have no questions.
Okay, I don't have anything other than you got to stop laughing in front of juries in murder cases.
But I won't say who.
Okay.
With none.
Motion adjourned. We'll vote on you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ridiculous.
My name is Christopher Iannella. I will chair the hearing today. At this point, good morning to you, Ms. Dunigan. At this point, I'd like to read a letter dated May 11th, 2022, addressed to the Executive Council. Dear Councilors, I'm pleased to nominate Elizabeth A. Dunigan to the position of Associate Justice of the Superior Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Sincerely, Charles Baker, Governor. Before we hear from you, I know you have some distinguished folks here, and we will hear from them. And I have your list of witnesses. First, we'll hear from the Honorable Paul Chernoff, former Associate Justice of the Superior Court. Good to see you again, Judge.
See you, Counselor. Should I sit down or sit?
That's fine.
Morning. Thank you for this honor. I thank both the council and I thank you. I've been confirmed by this council for the Superior Court, the District Court, the Parole Board when I was chairman for the Parole Board. And in fact, that takes me back to, I remember for the Parole Board, I stood here and Councilor Sonny McDonough was in that chair there. And it was a wonderful hearing. He turned out to be a very positive colleague of mine over.
I took over his district.
Well, anyways, well, that was a wonderful time. I am, at this point retired. In my retirement, you should know that I spend most of my time. My wife says I failed at retirement because I teach at Boston College Law School. I do volunteer work for Veterans Legal Services, where I represent fellow veterans. I do mediations for the court, and then I have a very small practice of ADR practice. The one other thing I do is I walk every morning with my wife. We walk 3 miles since March of 20, and we have walked the equivalent of Boston to Boise, Idaho, and we are headed for Seattle.
Yeah.
I have known Beth Dunigan since she was 16 years old. Her dad, the late Brian Dunigan, was a very close friend. He was magistrate of the Lowell Superior Court, and I would say he was my best friend. He tried to teach me what he taught Beth, and that is what you have to do is to do your job and to be nice to everyone. And he was, and she certainly is. And I tried to do that during my career. And Brian would say, be nice to everyone regardless. And regardless meant the big issues for some people. But that's what he did, and that's what Beth does. Beth has tried many cases before me. We've also taught together and been involved professionally for 35 years. And I can't give enough kudos as far as she is concerned. She's just a wonderful person, and she's nice to everyone. And, you know, I see her through the eyes of a judge because she's tried many cases before me. I see her through the eyes of other judges who talk about her, to lawyers, to probation people, to litigants, and especially to jurors, because I always went back after a jury trial to speak to the jury in the jury room, and it was so often the jury would say to me in the case that Beth tried, win or lose, what a wonderful assistant district attorney. She just treated everybody so well, and that's true regardless of the case, regardless of the stakes. That was Beth Dunigan. I would say one other thing, and that is that I sat on more than 1,000 jury cases in over 30 years, and an equal number or more of jury waived cases. And I always thought that the measure of a lawyer is to look at the lawyer when they lose a case. Look at their body language, look at how they treat the court, look at how they treat their opponent, look at how they treat the other people in the courtroom. As far as I'm concerned, that's a real window on that person's soul. And I've watched Beth win or lose, and especially on cases where she has lost. And one case in particular, which was a very difficult jury waived case, I watched her at the end of that case, and it was a window to her soul, and it's one reason I'm here today, and I urge you to confirm her. You'll be very proud of her if you confirm her as a Superior Court judge.
Thank you very much. Councilor Kennedy.
Judge, it was great to see you again, and I've appeared in front of you countless times over the years as well. including with Beth on occasion. And you're missed on the bench, I can tell you that. You something to the bench that disappearing a little bit, but hopefully not forever.
Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Juvenville.
How did I do when I lost?
So, window on your soul.
Yeah,
You passed the test.
had so many great memories with David. Started in 1979, and you were just one of the best judges to appear before. I don't know how you put up with us at sidebars sometimes. You had the patience of Job.
Counsel, I followed father who taught her to try to be nice to everyone. And she will, and she'll be so well balanced, and we'll all be very proud of her.
Well, I miss you on the bench, and I'm so glad to see you today. Back again, will you please?
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor Devaney.
Nice to see you. What an honor to have you be witness for this honor. And I thank you for all your service. How many years were you a judge? 30 years.
And you know, I was the youngest judge in all of Massachusetts, and now when I go back and do a summary jury trial, which I usually do one a year or so on a civil case, and I put a robe on, I'm the oldest judge, and it went by in a heartbeat. It went by in a heartbeat. So.
Well, you look great. And what I wanted to ask you is you've known her since she was
16 years old.
16. So what attribute do you think of that she will bring to the club?
I think she's a good teacher. I get her every single year to come to MCLE for the trial advocacy program, and she gives up an entire day and she sits there and she critiques and she counsels people, and she just has a wonderful way of relating to people and teaching them not only what she knows but what she doesn't know. So I think she'll learn a lot as a judge, and she will impart that to others.
Well, thank you for coming. So good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Attorney Kevin Mitchell. You can stand or sit, whatever you like.
Good morning, councilors. Obviously, I had no idea what Judge Chernoff would say about Elizabeth Dunigan, but I find it absolutely amazing that when she asked me to speak about her today, and I thought of all that I would say in terms of her intellect, her trial skills, what I came down to was a small anecdote that really established in my mind, I think, is her highest quality. And that was simply the exact same word, nice. Through all of what I would have said and get to that story. I have spoken before you several times with judges for juvenile district superior, and I understand what you are doing here and the need for you to be so careful in your selection. When Beth asked me to do this, as I said, tried to think of something in our background, because I have not known her for decades as I have known others, but I have known her since 2016, when I was assigned to the first of what became 2 murder cases that I had with Beth as lead prosecutor. And the anecdote that may seem totally remote from the qualifications of a judge of the Superior Court was I got this case at around 8 o'clock on a Friday evening. I had my client, who was there under investigation, soon to be indicted, and unfortunately with my assistance convicted. He was scheduled the next day with the attorney his family had hired to go in and have the second interview with the state police. I got her private phone number. I had never met her. I didn't know anything about her prior to that evening. I called her on her cell phone to introduce and to tell her we're not going to have that meeting, at least not until I know something. And I clearly, number one, got her to answer the phone, surprised me on a Friday evening. It was clear that she was in a restaurant from the background noise. And she gave me as much time as I needed. She stepped away from the group she was with. She was absolutely honest in describing for me the status of the investigation, the nature of the case, and the reality of what my client was looking at. Now, that may seem to you as an insignificant feature of a person before you. Plenty of people come here and talk about the intellect and the trial skills. But I was amazed as a prosecutor for 32 years, simply how decent, straightforward, and forthright she was with me. Sadly, I can tell you, I don't have that all the time with other assistant DAs. We ended up with that trial. It lasted 4 weeks, all of the discovery, practice, and motions in advance, and we have a second case, which is a tragic intra-family mental health matter. So I can tell you that she has the intellect, but you know that. I can certainly talk about her trial skills because I watched her in that courtroom for almost 4 weeks. And what was a gang case, so you know witnesses change stories, witnesses don't appear or do appear at the wrong time. She had the ability to be flexible. She had the maturity. You see that in all of her assignments with the various judges, district attorneys and what they accept of her. I have been on that group with the training advocacy, with the judge, and with her. I know of her commitment to the community. But mostly after 4 weeks and 2 separate cases, I can tell you of her ethics. I have never had reason to question her as a prosecutor. She has been straightforward and she has been honest with me. She is highly ethical, highly skilled, highly intelligent. I've always wondered why it is that some people have that innate sense of just simply being decent. Will she take control of the courtroom if she has to? Yes, and we want her to. But she has that ability. I think it's partly a respect for the role of the defense counsel, something that on this side I'm finding does not exist in all cases. But I started to really believe that maybe the reason she has those innate skills is something that the judge referenced. And that is, I know that her father was a clerk magistrate in Lowell. To me, you cannot have that position without having people skills and common sense. And I believe that what happened with Beth is she had the good sense to keep her mouth shut at the kitchen table in Lowell, and she took an awful lot in from him. I think if you put her on the bench, you will be very proud of your selection. She will never embarrass you. She will be a wonderful, wonderful associate justice of the.
Thank you very much. Counselor Devaney.
Well, you certainly got the best witnesses, I'll tell you, because both your testimony was from the heart. It means a lot to me. Can you tell us one particular case that comes to mind that you really were so impressed with?
Well, it has to be, I think, this particular MS-13 gang case. And one of the reasons for that is that incident occurred about 1 month before the federal government ended up taking up 53 individuals of the same MS-13 gang. You knew from day one there was going to be interaction between the 2 cases. There were federal witnesses, federal informants in my case. Those are the cases where you have to be very careful of what do the feds know, but they're not telling her, or what, that bucket of information. She fought as hard as anyone else to make sure we had access to information that, quite frankly, sometimes federal prosecutors are not quick to want to give over. And there was that sense of making sure that he got a fair trial, no matter what he may have been like in his crime, he got a fair trial. I was very impressed with that honor and that effort.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. That will exhaust the list of witnesses speaking on behalf of the nominee. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition? There being none at this point, you have the floor and we'll hear from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, councilors. I want to start by thanking certainly first Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito for their confidence in nominating me. To Chief Legal Counsel Bob Ross and the Executive Director of the JNC, Laurie Green Petrigno, for their guidance during this process all these months. Thank you to Valerie McCarthy and the staff at the Governor's Council, and thank you to the JNC and the Joint Bar Council. I also want to thank my 2 witnesses for coming here today. Judge Chernoff, Attorney Mitchell, I really appreciate you being here and telling this council a little bit about me. I appreciate your time and your words. I really. And to this council, who will ultimately decide if I'm the proper fit for Superior Court, I want to thank you for meeting with me for hours, for telling me to text and call you at any time, even during the weekends, and actually for speaking to me on holiday weekends, and also tolerating my 5 different ways of communication the first day I heard I was nominated. With me today is my older brother, Brian, and he is here giving me all the love and support that my 3 siblings have always given me and still give me, my brother Greg and my sister Kathy. Also with me is my husband, Jay Gillespie, who dropped me off outside based on the parade and made it just in time for me to talk about him, I guess. I want to thank him for his support during this process. In all matters, large and small, and personal and professional. I am honored to be here today in this historic room where these great decisions are made for the benefit of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I have spent half of my life in public service and all of my adult profession in public service. I've been an assistant DA in Middlesex since my admission to the bar in 1996. That's 25 years. What I want to say is that I credit the first 25 years of my life for giving me the foundation I needed in order to sit here today before you. The only thing that would make this experience greater is if my parents were seated behind me next to my husband, Jay. I was born in a Norwood hospital and brought home to Lowell, where I was raised with 3 siblings and amazing parents, Brian and Judy. I was educated in the Lowell public school system. I graduated from Lowell High School, and I attended the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. My formative years in Lowell not only shaped me into the person I am, but they also gave me a strong Merrimack Valley accent, rivals any Boston accent. I'm the 3rd of my 4 siblings, all born within 5 years of each other. We were raised by 2 parents that both worked outside the home in order to support their households of 6. My mother was home during the day and worked as a private duty nurse at night, while my father worked his New England territory as a salesman. In 1981, my father became an assistant clerk in Middlesex, working for Edward Sullivan. Like many clerks in his day, he was a graduate of college, St. Anselm's, but he was not a lawyer. He worked in a civil session, eventually becoming the clerk magistrate, as you've heard, in Lowell Superior Court, where he worked until his death in 1996. He loved his job and he talked about it often. And this is when I first became exposed to the law and the court and the unique entities that make up the court system and the trial court. My mother was a graduate of Catherine Labouré School of Nursing, and when her children were still in school, she enrolled in Lesley College and earned her BSN. She spent the remainder of her career as a public health nurse for the town of Chelmsford. It was from her example that I witnessed true empathy and of serving in the community. Growing up in Lowell, I felt the total support of my parents, and it left me with the feeling that I could accomplish anything. I recognize that I was fortunate to have this upbringing. They also instilled in me a strong work ethic. I started working as a teenager. I babysat, I worked at CVS, and I had a paper route delivering the Lowell Sun for longer than I wanted to admit back then. After graduating from UMass Amherst, I chose the law as my path, and I worked as a paralegal at Morrison, Mahoney & Miller in Boston, now Morrison Mahoney. And then I enrolled at New England School of Law as a day student. I enjoyed the subject matter, and I had decided that civil work would be my future, and that would be my path. After my second year of law school, I took my parents' advice to diversify my resume, do something a little different to put it on your resume. I applied at the Middlesex District Attorney's Office to work under the SJC Rule 303 so that I could be in court supervised by another assistant district attorney. That summer, I was based in Woburn District Court, and I appeared in court every day, all day, covering arraignments, motions, and bench trials. The courtroom was home for me. I never looked back. I'm sorry, Morrison, Mahoney, and Miller in the civil world. Yeah, I never looked back. I was fortunate enough to get a job and accept it before my dad died. He died my 3rd year of law school during finals week. Ironically, he died on May 1st, which is Law Day. My mother and my siblings and I remained uber close as our family was reduced. I continued to live at home to afford the job I now loved and to pay off student loans. During my time at the DA's office, I've investigated and prosecuted countless criminal offenses, and I've tried the most serious and challenging criminal cases before countless judges. However, the best thing about my experience as an ADA was meeting my husband, Jay, in the smallest courtroom I've ever been in. It was on the first floor of the Cambridge Courthouse, the juvenile session, down the hall from the coffee shop. He was the sole court officer in this small courtroom, but I could not have missed him no matter the size of the crowd. He has made me laugh every day since then, a much-needed medicine in this business. Jay also gave me the gift of more family with his son named Jordan, who laughs like his dad. I was fortunate to share my life and my professional triumphs and disappointments with my biggest supporter and most trusted confidant, my mother, until her passing in 2014. I am here today, a collection of all of these personal experiences in years in this profession working in a courtroom. Every day as an assistant district attorney, I have embraced the core principle that as a prosecutor, you are not just an advocate, you are a minister of justice. I have seen the difference a good judge makes in her rulings or his ruling, in the treatment of the parties, and the overall tone that he or she sets in the courtroom. Should this body confirm my nomination, I can assure you I will be dedicated and I will be fair. I will see the people and not just the cases. Thank you for your consideration. I welcome certainly any questions the councilors may have for me.
Thank you very much. Councilor Eileen Duff.
Thank you. Nice to see you, a daughter of Lowell. You are very beloved up in that area.
Thank you.
And many calls about you. What did you major in as an undergraduate?
Legal studies.
Because that was beautiful. Oh, it says here, yeah. That was beautifully written.
Thank you.
What you just read. You know, I talk a lot about writing, especially in Superior Court, you know, that I write. And I don't think writing is something that everybody can actually do. I think a lot of people think they can, but they can't. So kudos to you on that. I don't have a lot of questions. I mean, you're eminently qualified for this. You have a great balance. I'm going to ask you a couple of things, though. Can you tell me a little bit about the Sandra Day O'Connor Award that's on your resume?
Yes. So in 2017, I was inducted into the American College of Trial Lawyers, which is an association, it's a fellowship, and you can't apply, you have to be nominated by the college, and it's sort of a three-prong analysis, extensive trial experience, ethics, and collegiality. When I was inducted into that, I joined that committee, the Sandra Day O'Connor Jurist Award Committee, and the American College actually is Canada as well as America, and so there are different members on this. Yes. And so what we do is we discuss giving an award, and it's not done every year, to a judge who doesn't have to be a member of the college, who has demonstrated real courage during adversity. So many of the people on the committee are judges, some are not, and we discuss many judges and determine perhaps who should be offered the award each year of the meeting.
Also, now here's a question. Can you tell us the difference between the litigator and in your own words? That's not a trick.
Yeah.
It's different things, aren't
No, they are different things. When I hear or say litigator, I think trial
they?
attorney.
Too. But I've been taught by my colleague that they're not the same thing. And he's opened my mind into really thinking about these things differently. In you know, something I've always realized is sometimes we have people sitting there who people think they're trial attorneys, but they're really litigators, meaning how one looks at a trial. Right? You might say, well, they've only been to trial 10 times, but they've actually litigated hundreds of cases. Different things. Some people count the litigation as a trial. It's semantics.
Right.
And do you judge your... I'm just curious, because Councilor Kennedy is really talking... I'm not a lawyer, I'm a public policy person. I've worked with some great lawyers, but I love learning from these guys. And it's really an important distinction, because sometimes the public doesn't understand, and they might say, oh, well, that person isn't qualified because they only did so many trials. That's not true, is it?
Right. No.
Because it's the litigation that matters. Very true. And is it true? And again, these aren't tricks. I'm just curious. I'm really intellectually curious. Is today, are we more I guess my gut is telling me, in everything I've learned and worked with, is that you really don't want to go to trial if you can help it, do you?
I agree with that.
So the idea is to litigate, not try.
Right, and I think it happens certainly a lot in the civil world. And that's more when I'm so,
So much of a criminal thing, right? It would.
right, exactly. And we talk about the civil work, I mean, those are successes, the cases that settle. And you are litigating those day in, day out with the depositions, with the pretrial conference reports, you know, with the motions. And being a trial attorney, understanding the rules of evidence and certainly expert testimony and having a sense of how well your expert would do. You're litigating every day, all the time when you look at that file.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating because I've known it, but I haven't known the right words. You know, you think you know them, but you really don't. You sit here 10 years and you still don't know the right words. So I find it fascinating. I'm glad you shared that with me. It's also terrific that you started out in the civil, because from what I understand from folks in the courts, many people believe, and I don't know, again, I'm not in a trial attorney or that the civil is harder to learn than the criminal. Do you concur with that, or does it depend on the person? I mean,
I think it depends on your interest in it. And, you know, because when I started Morrison, Mahoney, Miller, I was working on like a big product liability cases and super funds. And I was just so eager that, you know, the more I learned, the better I liked it, the more I wanted to do it. And then when I switched to criminal, you know, I loved that. So I'm hoping that whatever I'm tasked with, I will love and then get great at it. That's the hope.
the lawyers that I, worked with, it was all policy stuff, so I guess that would be maybe more in the civil side of things. And then when I was younger, not working with lawyers, but I had a lot of friends who were in the banking industry, but working here in the States, a low prices with the Federal Home Loan Bank. That's fascinating. Fascinating stuff. And I was blessed to have met Bill Black and some of the you probably don't know. If you don't know banking, you don't know who these people are. But, these people in San Francisco turned out to be the experts in this thing. I think back on it and being in my 20s, having dinner with people like this, and they're just telling you about it, and I absorb information pretty easily, but it's fascinating. Law is fascinating. I wish I were younger. I would go to law school. My mother always said I should, but as Counsel Kennedy says, they probably would throw me out of the court if I'm. So anyway, I have no more questions for you. You're a terrific candidate.
Thank you.
And you've earned your way here. I know you come from a legacy of lawyers and people in public service. And sometimes folks think, oh, well, she's connections. You're not. You're here because you earned it.
Thank you.
You deserve to be here. So good for you. The people of Lowell are very, very proud of you. And I can sincerely, honestly say, it's one of my favorite cities in my district.
Thanks.
And they have in mass actually reached out to me about you.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah,
It really is great, because I don't always get that, but you're beloved and you're respected. So congratulations, and thank you for applying. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councilor Terry Kennedy.
How long have I known you, Beth?
25 years.
I've known that.
When you were a student,
Right.
court. We've had countless cases together, both in district and some in Superior. One of the things that amazed me when you got nominated, as I was going around the courts and people realized you got nominated, was how supportive all the defense bar was. That's not always the case. You know that. It's not always the case. And they were. Everybody was, Beth Dunigan, that's fantastic. That's great. As I'm walking on the courts, they were very, very happy for you, and understandably so. I put one rule in place I told you to do every morning. Can you tell me what that was?
Yes. If I become a judge, the one rule, come out to the bench and be nice.
Smile.
Smile.
I say smile.
Yes, you did say smile.
It's free, right?
It's free.
Be nice to the lawyers and litigants. It's free. And you promise you do that every day, right?
Promise, it's on tape now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Juvenville.
Thank you very much. Well, you've had two great witnesses. I think the world of they're fellows that have been around the court and courtrooms all their lives. Ed Chernoff and Kevin Mitchell. They don't get any better than that to come in here and talk about somebody in your role over the years. I also got a call from Steve Weymouth, who went on and on about you, and just couldn't be more complimentary to the way you have had cases. I have not had a case with you, I don't think.
No.
It was probably my loss. And you've got a nice letter here from Kenny Fishman and Marion Ryan. Nat Machera also said very good things about you. So those are people I respect a lot. Terry Kennedy said a lot of good things about your home counselor is very much a supporter of yours in your corner. So I can't argue with all those people. I have to take their advice. So I will be voting for you next week.
Thanks, Counselor.
Can I say one other thing, Mr. Chairman?
Counselor Kennedy, real quick, because
I just want to say that when you got nominated and Council Ianella reviewed your resume, he called me up right away. You see this, Beth Dunigan, she looks like the real thing. And I already know her. He's very supportive of you when you were nominated.
thank you very much. Counselor Devaney.
Nice seeing you again.
You too.
Thank you for all the time you afforded me. I just was so impressed in the relationship you had with your dad and what a mentor and for you to do what you're doing. That really touched me. Now you went to the JNC. 21 attorneys are chosen to interview and to give the recommendation to the governor. How many of the 21 were there?
12.
Enough said. I've talked about it enough. It's wrong. And in this administration, there has never been 21 at a hearing. So I'm glad you're here. First time you applied also. Yes. I can't even imagine cases that you've had. Rapes, murders, so many things. I don't know how you go home at night afterwards. God bless you for doing it. We need someone like you in the Superior Court with a strong criminal background, And some of the cases were a little difficult and who you were going up against.
Mhm.
I mean, I have great respect for police and state troopers, but there's always one bad apple in the bunch. Tell us about the cases that you had, those 2 cases that you put in your JNC about the state troopers.
I had a prosecution of a state trooper in Cambridge in 2006. It was a rape of a young woman who was parked in a car and he pulled up behind her. And, she was with a man that had warrants, and a trooper did not arrest him. He gave him some money and told him to leave. He then turned to the woman and said, you're with a bad guy, I did you a favor. He had what looked like cocaine and said, you could go to Framingham or you could go to an MDC building with me. She had suffered for years with drug misuse issues, and she didn't think anyone would believe her. So they went to a location and he sexually assaulted her, and that was a trial back quite a few years ago, and he was convicted.
And what was the result? That's the thing is, I want to know the rest of the story. And the JNC questionnaire can't tell you all of that. So tell me, what was the result?
He was convicted of the 3 counts, the 3 different types of sexual assault, of rape. It was about a week and a half trial. And because I don't focus on it, I honestly don't remember the sentence. But I want to say it was between 9 and 12 years in state prison. That was what was imposed sentence.
Yeah, some of these, just reading it, I can't even imagine how you got through it. And the child pornography, having them in sex life, terrible. They're taking their lives away from these children. Tell us about one of those cases that you referenced.
In the JNC application, that was a case actually originated out of Essex County, and I was specially assigned from Middlesex for conflict issues. I was 3 co-defendants. The lead defendant was a female, the mother, and she was charged as well as the other 2 individuals. She would allow men to have sex with her 8-year-old daughter in exchange for narcotics. So it was upsetting and very serious. And as you said, there were some very skilled defense attorneys on each side of those 3 cases. Those resulted in changes of plea. They pled guilty.
Are you seeing, through the years in your practice, more juvenile crime?
Well, they did change the age for juvenile court, so that sort of might skew the numbers. My cases primarily have been either supervision of Superior Court cases or homicides. So I wouldn't want to answer that and be wrong. I certainly see it, but I don't know.
What's your opinion on increasing the age in juvenile court?
We just did it, so I think I'm okay right now, you know? Certainly if that,
They never increase it. I mean, what's been happening in Texas and everywhere, it seems to be juveniles that are, but I think that juvenile court is overworked as it is. And I don't think that we should be increasing the age. I think it would be a terrible thing. And anyway, I've had my little experience a year. I volunteered counseling juveniles on probation, and I saw the other side, and that was good for me because I lived in my own little world with 4 children and husband, and some of the lives that they live is tragic, and it would take a while for them to trust me. I met them one-on-one. I remember one teenage girl, and mother was a prostitute. She didn't know who her father was. And mother would lock her in her bedroom when she went out at night. I mean, the things that they went through. So I understand the other side. But then I understand the criminal side of juveniles that I think we should keep that cap on the juvenile court. So then you had one that was a homicide. And it was a juvenile, and there were 2. And that was Commonwealth versus Jose Vasquez Ardon.
yes, Ardone, yes. That's actually the case that Mr. Mitchell represented, the juvenile defender.
Well, I mean, we could go on. All your cases are really horrendous, but for you to be able to handle this, I have such confidence of you going into the Superior Court. Now, how has the pandemic affected you? You had trials. How have you been able to go forward with those, and where are we now?
Well, certainly it did halt the trials, which is a big problem facing the Superior Court that they're addressing. Me personally, I was on trial when the courthouse was shut down and the pandemic really hit. It was actually the 3rd defendant in that MS-13 gang murder. He was an adult, and he is an adult. We were probably 2.5 weeks into trial. I had called 28, 30 witnesses. We were 8 witnesses away from resting. And the clerk, who they work unbelievably, texted us Sunday night, don't come in tomorrow. And then the next day we got on the phone, and 2 days later, the judge had to declare a mistrial based on the inability to bring the jurors back.
Well, it's been a very difficult time in the court, hasn't it?
Yes.
What about, some of these cases? You have a lot of rape cases too.
You told me 11.
I was just wondering what the sentencing was for some of these, and I was thinking of the one, Alva Dillon. Remember that one?
Yes, yes. That particular case is in my application in response to one of the most recent events I worked on that did not result in a trial. So that particular case was actually an investigation.
So it said it was dismissed. I don't understand this part, but anyway, you can explain it, dismissed the prosecution in the interest of justice. Tell me what the interest of justice.
The interest of justice was there was insufficient evidence to charge the individual. I learned of the allegation early on. I was telephoned by the police. I assigned the case to myself. I assisted the police with an investigation, and the evidence revealed that we did not have probable cause that a crime had occurred. So it was dismissed.
You investigate, and you're a mentor, and you oversee all the ADAs. And, you know, to go to a murder scene where a man not only murdered his wife, but he dismembered her, and you had to go in and you dismembered. Tell us about that.
It's gross.
I think people rise to what's expected of us. I knew that that was my job. And I was supported certainly by other assistant DAs and the state police, our CPAC unit and the local police, and the chemists and the crime lab. You have a job to do, and you have to determine what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. And then I go home and traumatize my husband, probably.
So do you suggest what that sentence should have been, for example, for that husband?
Well, in that particular case, the dismemberment, that was a son and his mother that was murdered. And he's accused of that. That's, well, it's only an allegation right now. It's a pending.
Okay. So, no, I'm very pleased, and I was so pleased that you came out. And, you know, like I said, you have to think that you were inspired by your dad. I really believe that. And then Chad, knowing you for 15 years, what's better than that? Really. But I could go on and on. Your cases are unbelievable, and God bless you for what you do. And I wish you all good luck as a security.
Thank you very much. Counselor Mary Hurley.
Good morning. We talked at some length,
Yes.
and I was extremely impressed with your resume and application. I think that you've set forth an amazing record as far as prosecution of a lot of tough cases. In talking to you, I have compassion. You certainly have the smarts. You're going to have to catch up somewhat on civil, but compared to first-degree murder case, that's a piece of cake in most instances. I really don't have any questions. You answered my questions concerning bail and dangerousness and protection of victims, which is where I come from. So with that said, I intend to vote for you next week.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you very much. Counselor Joseph Ferreira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you again. We had a extensive conversation last week, I remember. Your record is impeccable. Someone who served 30 years in law enforcement and got to serve as a law clerk with Judge Chernoff, who knows my office very well. I am pleased to vote for you next week. You have big fans in Counselor Kennedy and Counselor Ianella, and your reputation far precedes you. So thank you for your service to the Commonwealth, and I'll be voting for you next week.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions. We had a lengthy conversation at my office. We knew some of the same people. Now you have you've had a great career. You're definitely qualified. You have the temperament, you have the judgment, you have the demeanor. I think you're going to be a great addition to the Superior Court. When your name comes before the council next week, I'd be more than happy to support you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. That will conclude the hearing. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.
Our assembly to order, and I recognize Councilor Jubenville for our prayer and pledge today.
May our thoughts and prayers go out to the families whose loved ones did not return home from school because of the tragic shooting in Uvalde, Texas. May the teachers and little ones who were killed that day receive our warm love and compassion, and may they rest in peace.
Amen.
Amen.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I recognize Councilor Ferrera for a motion to record advice and consent for the financial warrant.
So move, Governor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the pending list of notaries, public, and justices of the peace.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. I recognize Councilor Ianella for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Erica Paula Reese to the position of Associate Justice of the Boston Municipal Court.
Thank you. Motion, so moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the appointment of Mary Gallant Cote to the position of Clerk Magistrate of the Berkshire Juvenile Court.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. I recognize Councilor Jubenville for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of John J. Barrett III to the position of Administrative Judge at the Department of Industrial Accidents to a 6-year term expiring January 6, 2027.
So moved, Lieutenant Governor.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. We may commence the roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay. I recognize Councilor Jubenville for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Karen A. Fitzgerald to the position of Administrative Judge at the Department of Industrial Accidents to a 6-year term expiring January 6, 2027.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Dennis M. Marr to the position of Administrative Judge at the Department of Industrial Accidents to a 6-year term expiring September 15, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
There is a motion and a second, and we may begin the roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay. I recognize Councilor Hurley for a motion to record advice and consent for the reappointment of Catherine Watson Cosiel to the position of Administrative Law Judge at the Department of Industrial Accidents to a 6-year term expiring August 18, 2026.
Since she wrote the book on workers' comp, I, with pleasure, put forth her name and nomination.
Second.
Second with pleasure.
Okay, great. With pleasure. There is a motion, a second, and a roll call.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. We have 2 nominations today. James M. Kelcourse has been nominated as a member of the parole board. Councilor Duff, is there a date for this hearing?
June 15th at 10:30 in the morning.
Okay, June 15th, 10:30. Mary Ann Galvin has been nominated as a member of the parole board. And Councilor Ferrera, do you have a date for this hearing?
June 15th, 12:15.
Okay, very good.
What are the 2 dates?
June 15th at 10:30 and 12:15.
Same day.
All right, that concludes our business today. Thank you.
Thank you.